So another thing we're doing right now in 2025 is really focused on what we call defined business cases. Where are we actually seeing opportunities to do a couple of things? One is how do I make sure that I can link in between ecosystems? But also how do I make information move in an ecosystem better? How do we make things simpler? So I'm going to discuss a couple of topics here that might seem disjoint. One is a white paper. The other is the concept of clusters that we've been working on, which are basically ecosystems that are touching many different stakeholders. The reason I want to raise up the white papers is when we launched in Davos in January, we had a new website, everything. We had 4 new white papers, which we've received great feedback on. 3 of them are great pieces of work. The intro to Ayra is very simple. The ecosystem of ecosystem provided some refinements on the ecosystem of ecosystems thinking. And the technical white paper outlines how to connect things. How do we wire these things up? What does it mean at the trustworthy query protocol? What does it mean when you use that? What does it mean for having conformist test suite, and why do we need that? But the paper that I've been sharing and has been creating new thinking has been the one called the special network effects of Ayra network credentials. And this is where we described a concept that links in uh, new ways of thinking on these network effects. So jumping over to clusters, one of the things we've been working on is how do we work with members to find where the business cases are that require that neutral place to share information, to have consistent business governance and tech so that we can actually solve business problems. We've been working with various different groups, ranging from a group of US banking folks, financial institutions, regulators, systems integrators, lawyers, and the core providers, the banking core providers, the insurance industry, IoT, Internet of Things, sustainability, workforce credentialing, education. We've also, though, been looking at it being pulled in a couple different directions. We've seen activity on what we call first person. This is something we got pulled into starting in December, but really culminated in January. We were invited to participate in a late January session. Turns out it looked at that point, the idea was pretty um, out there. It was not something that we were going to throw out to members right away. We've started digesting it and realized that this first person credential project might have some legs. We've been working with Glyph on the problem of organizational ID. We've been approached by several different groups on what do we do, what value can we add about AI agents. But the one that's grabbing attention right now is this first person credential. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing on that. But first, the Ayra network credentials concept. So we know that in various different digital ecosystems, we have a lot of different data floating around. We have what we would call ecosystem specific credentials. But then we get into what we would call cluster specific. So in the US banking industry, the banks have different information depending on what kind of bank they are, what kind of financial institution. Are they a bank? And I love this phrase. Are they a non-bank bank? That's my favorite financial institution phrase. They operate in various different ways. They have very different stakeholders. I mentioned financial institution, regulators, the systems integrators, the lawyers, the core providers are working in different domains. And then we have this more broad domain where we have more inter-ecosystem usage, but also perhaps a larger business reach. If you haven't seen the special network effects paper, I would suggest taking a look at it. Because what we've recognized is there's a lot of data that really we don't know that Ayra adds a ton of value to it. It's native to the system. It's already being exchanged and it's being exchanged well. But there are other areas where they're having interoperability problems. There are overall differences, and we believe we can get alignment on some of these and help with those ecosystems, moving information, whether it's about identity, whether it's about payments, whether it's about the things and objects that they work on. But the idea behind the first person credentials is that as we have all of us, we're out here, we work with organizations, we're parts of different communities. Part of the paper started talking about, well, what happens when I have another person and I want to prove that I have a relationship between them? What happens if I have a particular role? I'm either an employee of or customer of a member of a particular organization. Same thing goes for a community. This special network effects paper talks about these overall relationships. So we've been looking at and talking with all of our members at where are we finding the sort of the interactions that are similar, where the patterns underlying things are similar, and where are we having similar kinds of problems. One of the projects we got into in August, we started talking about employee badges. That was kind of the first signal that we got. Didn't go too far. We didn't want to throw in a whole bunch of work at it if there wasn't a lot of uptake. People were definitely sharing information about it, but it didn't seem to take off. But then we got involved with this person credential things, and things started to shift a little bit. And I think we may have ended up back with the ability to do employee badges, but let me get to that. So I want to talk a little bit about Ayra Cards. This is the first person credential part. The first person credential project, if you read up about it, we do have information. It's not maintained by Ayra. We were invited in to participate. It's a whole bunch of different groups who are working on this. The concept ranges from things that could be done today immediately versus things that have to be researched. And there are universities who are looking at some of the zero knowledge proof capabilities, cryptography that has to be developed from an academic perspective and then brought in. So it's kind of really long term. We don't want to focus Ayra on things that are 5, 10 years out. We want to make sure that we can actually do things today. This came out of a paper. One of the things that started to align the decentralized world was this paper that came out from a whole bunch of leaders. Wendy Seltzer is one of our governance leads. She's been helping us. We know Kim Hamilton Duffy and various other players who participated in this document. The thinking behind it was about 60 pages of requirements on what are we going to need to do to prove that I'm a person, to prove that if I have an AI and it's my AI, that I can actually prove that that's my AI. The AI can prove it's acting for me. The AI can prove that it's acting for the customer, that the AI isn't going to basically dominate and take over and pretend to be us with no controls. What they didn't do in this paper listed a ton of requirements, 50, 60 pages of work. What they didn't do is provide any solutions. So some groups have been looking at this since then, since August last year, just after we were founded. And we've started working with a group right now. And for those who we've been going through, our overall project structure. This is an early stage. We're still in this exploration stage. We've really just entered it. We virtually attended a meeting in late January. Some of our team on other cover, their other jobs, were down in at a DARPA function. So the U.S. Defense Department, DARPA, is actually doing research into this exact problem: personhood credentials, first person credentials. And we started to look at this, and we started to share these ideas about 2 weeks ago. We were in Zurich at DICE, and we also shared this concept with a few other folks since then. But this is a new idea. It's still early. We have 4 stages that our projects go through. The project stage, which you'll note it says private, it's not secret, it's not hidden, it's just not something we're going to put on the website and say, this is what we're doing, because we don't know if we're going to be doing it. We're just exploring it. And we need the resources to make sure we can actually take a good look at it and make sure that it's worth going on to the next stage, which is where we start to propose it as a project, bring other members in, then develop and execution is where the lion's share of the work gets done. But we're in this early exploration stage because it's early days. The ideas I'm going to share here are in their early stages. We are recording this particular section and we're going to put it on the website now because we're finally at a point where we're okay sharing the idea, knowing very well, that 60 days from now, 2 years from now, the message I'm sharing today may look utterly naive, but we think we actually have a pretty good idea. The ideas are here for discussion. Some of them we think are going to be wrong, but directionally they'll be correct. And, we may be lacking some detail. And we're okay with that. It's part of our job is to explore some of these things when we get brought in and bring these forward to our members and make sure that they're aware of what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and what we think might be worthwhile to pursue. So this is for all of our Ayra members to explore with us. So I want to jump back and consider a business card. Business card, we know what content it's going to have because I decide what's going to get put on it, or my company decides. I can have my own personal card, which I'm in total control of, or I have a corporate card, which is, things are decided for me. The key thing is in context, I hand it to you because you asked for it or because I offered it. I give you my card, and then you decide what to do with it. When it's in your hands, you decide that you're going to put it in your pocket, deal with it later. You decide to look on it, scan the QR code on the back, look at my name, whatever it is, but it's your decision to do things with the small amount of data that I've given you. So digitally though, I'm going to show you, this is actually a screenshot of my real British Columbia government person credential. This is a high assurance credential issued to me by the British Columbia government. It's tied to my overall government account. But if I put that card in my wallet and put some data with it, and it's there digitally, what happens then? How do you ask for it? How do I offer it? What we know is there's no consistency right now. There's no consistency of me walking in with a card with a digital phone and signing in at a hotel, signing in at my company. One of our members has over 960 entities that they have enough difficulty tracking their own group employees. Each company does a good job itself, I'm sure. All of us have relationships with other companies. How do I get into your office and share information? It's a totally different ritual every time. And that's just in one ecosystem. If we start sharing information across ecosystem where I want to start using my own card to do things elsewhere, it gets even more complicated. But what if we could define the dance steps? You'll hear me use that phrase. If Ayra can help define the first couple dance steps, where the offer or request for the card is made, where someone says, do you have a card? I said, yes, I do. Here you go. Or I offer the card to you, where we're sharing some signed and verifiable data. These are credentials. It would be simple. You can expect a small amount of standard data depending on what type of card it is. Could be a travel card, could be a personal card, could be a business card, could be an employee badge. But it also may be dynamic. You may get a list of other data packages, payloads, where you have different things that are attached to this card that depending on what you're doing, you may or may not know what those payloads are. Because really it's up to the consuming system to say, hey, what are these payloads about? Which payloads do I care about? If I'm a hotel, I may not care about your employee badge information, but I really do care about those travel preferences that you're about to share with me. Which payloads you will trust. We'll talk about some of the higher trust. That example, if I pointed to my BC government ID, it is considered a high assurance credential in Canada, level of assurance 3. Bank IDs are typically level of assurance 2. So it actually is a high assurance credential, but you need to know how to ask for it. I could have a payload that points to it, points you to it, says, hey, ask for this. I'll show you my BC Gov card. That also means you have to have verification capabilities that our members already have to have a diverse set of pieces of information. You decide on a business level, what are you going to do with those payloads? Which ones are you going to ingest? Which ones are you going to ignore? But also you can create new payloads. The whole idea is that Ayra doesn't want to be involved in that unless it makes sense for the overall Ayra community to say, hey, this particular payload here, we've decided, this is a really helpful thing. If even just connecting on Signal or something could be innocuous, very simple, very social, or it could be something on a business level. We say, no, this is actually critically important for all Ayra members or enough Ayra members that they want Ayra to get involved in helping standardize some of these payloads. So what would this look like? So if I have my card in there, it would point at rich information. We got government ID, which I just realized I have a duplicate slide. Sorry. So it points at information, education, credentials, professional designation, my LinkedIn, GitHub, legal, some custom data that I don't even know what it is, but you do. Government ID. In this case, this is where it points actually back. That is actually a screenshot. I didn't really reveal much. I revealed my country and province. I could reveal everything, but that's a little privacy weird. But that actually could point you, I could point you directly to how you ask for that high assurance credential. So let's talk a little bit about what this might mean for all of our members. We have got wallets with members all over the place, all of them capable of ingesting these particular tools, these particular cards. It's a standard format. What would that look like? So we point to this information. Could also be an employee badge where I am actually walking in the office and it holds a couple of things. It has information that the system needs to do for compliance checks. One of our, the workforce credentialing, worker mobility side, there's an immense amount of information that simply says, hey, start the dance. This is the compliance file you want to pull up in the backend system to let me know if I should be allowed into the office today and to let you know whether you should let me into the office today. I'm not carrying everything. I'm just pointing you to the system in the backend that does that. So how does that look? I mean, it looks each one of these ecosystems we see on here, perhaps org ID is a little bit different, but not really. We actually presented similar things with Glyph. How do you tie this to an LEI? How do you tie this to a VLEI? I'll still discuss that in a moment. But the key is it works in both between ecosystems. But the concept also works as just a standard way of doing things inside your own ecosystem, especially when you have more than one wallet, more than one type of verification technology, more than one type of issuance technology in your own ecosystem. So it works both in an intra and an inter ecosystem basis. Um, here's an information that I wanted to share where I have Joe Bloggins, who's a dev here, and it's pointing to, I can point to a URL. That URL, in this case, this is actually the Ayra Association, our corporate register in the commercial register in Switzerland. You can see it's anchored down. It actually has a Zurich identifier as well as a country level identifier. This is me sharing basically a pointer to a website, but at least tells you something. You to have no assurance on that other than Daryl presented this card and he says he's the executive director, or this is Joe Bloggins, who's the developer for us at the Ayra Association. This could also be pointing to an LEI. An LEI, this is just an attribute. This is not a VLEI. This is just an attribute. What that does, same thing as the Swiss register, is it tells you, hey, I can at least go check he has an LEI. He's asserted that's his LEI, but I don't know that this is actually Joey Bloggins. Does he have any rights in that company? But it is a quick and simple and consistent way of onboarding, consistent way of sharing information so that I know that I can get that piece of information and then I decide what to do with it. What do I do with an LEI? Your choice. When we get a little bit more advanced is where we talk about, Ayra does the first couple dance moves, but then the VLEI dance takes over. So if I have a VLEI, I would actually hook into the VLEI ecosystem, which actually would tie the company down and it would say, hey, the organization, Joey Bloggins is a person there. Yes, Joey Bloggins has signing authority for that company. You could do all of the work in the VLEI system to come back and say, Joey, I need you to do your signing ritual to prove this is actually you. Has nothing to do with the card. The card just showed us where to go. They come back and basically say, yep, Joey was able to sign this particular thing. Similarly, when we were working with Glyph on where does this go as far as organization ID and how does it kind of help? We looked at a couple of different types of cards. One is an Ayra business card where it's me. I point to an org card. I might have a payload here. It says, here's the organization card. I don't even know what that is myself, but your system could easily ingest it to say, it's not just Daryl O'Donnell, Executive Director of Ayra Association. It's Daryl O'Donnell plus the information about the organization you want to know. We worked this very simple, very trivialized version of what a schema could look like. I don't even know if the schema works. It kind of made up. But the idea there is we're linking information. And this is something we're working on with Glyph to say, hey, does this concept work? Because one of the concepts that started this terminology of a card, just a card, is Alexandre, the CEO at Glyph, pointed out that really what VLEIs are, what the LEI is, it's an organizational passport. Organizational passport has a particular meaning. It's used in a very particular context. It's very rigid on what it is, how you use it, what information is contained, and it implies high assurance. This is the document we use to cross borders. We want something lightweight that makes the ritual simple and consistent so that I can use it in a consistent way if I'm, again, checking into a hotel, if I'm tapping in at the office if I'm tapping it at a customer's office, if I'm just meeting you and want to share a little bit of information to connect. So we like that card idea. It's just a thinking exercise. So what we're looking at right now is working on, this is the working name. We're probably going to change this. Um, a human trust fabric. We're working with a group called Customer Commons. If anyone knows Doc Searles is one of the founders of that. They're a 501c3 charity in the States, and they've got some donors who are really interested in this overall first person credential capability. And we're working on that exploration stage with them to begin developing the governance frameworks that need to be done. They're already developing a proof of concept app that we'll be showing in a couple of weeks. That's more of a, this is what it could look like on a personal basis as you create a social graph, a social fabric. We're working on a timeline basis right now. Again, they are doing a proof of concept app. It's not Ayra's job to be building apps. That's for our members to do. We are working on that. We haven't signed the paper. We're working to sign paper, any day now to create an early stage governance framework. The goal there is we will also work with other funders. We believe there are philanthropic funders out there that actually are looking at this space due to threats to democracy, the threats that AI introduce. On the beta framework, which things get a little more solid, but also looking at members and saying, hey, do you want to participate in this? So far, we've had some interest. Some are still exploring and seeing what makes sense, but let us know what you think. The goal is later this year, early next year, we would actually launch that framework. Now, people have asked, where do members play a role? And the thing is literally everywhere, whether it be issuing, holding, consuming, verifying, governing, including running trust registries as well as building things. Because we know that these cards, with the payloads are needed. How we hold them, whether the wallets, apps that are holding it, vaults, what happens when we consume them, how do you do the beginnings of the dance, but then how do you orchestrate integration into the back-end systems that are going to go and validate a particular university degree in the velocity network, but also pull a compliance file from a worker mobility system to make sure that, my visa that's tied to that degree is valid, but also the governing side. This is, registering as players in the network, but also helping design the overall system, including those payloads, and providing trust registries. Because as more and more ecosystems come on, we need those trust registries. Each ecosystem is going to need to run a trust registry. But here's another idea that we floated in Zurich a couple weeks ago. One is that we're in the middle of establishing a member portal. But we want to make sure that there is not just public information, but there's also information that's for members only. So we need some minor access control for members. Now we can do single sign-on, usernames and passwords. By the way, I'm hoping that our friend Jacques from Bhutan, who's going to present right after this, will mention the fact, and I'm just going to steal the punchline. Bhutan has done away with usernames and passwords for government interfacing. It's all right here in the wallet. That's, I don't know if you know much about usernames and passwords, getting to that level, pretty hardcore. And it's pretty impressive. So we will probably have to do SSO just because, we're not here to go and build a system that fully replaces. We want our members to be able to put credentials in their wallet to be able to access things. But what if we did the following? Just an idea. We could create an Ayra member card that follows the same concept as these Ayra cards, that complies with the framework. It's issued by Ayra. This is the one exception, by the way, where Ayra would actually be an issuer. But we also could have members do that, for each other too. But it's also consumed by Ayra and the Ayra member portal. And we would use that to manage the access, and we would be dog fooding. We'd be taking our member card, using it to make sure that we're accessing that. And who knows where else that could be useful. We believe that members can provide all of the tech stack, the trust registries, but also start participating in, because the conformance testing suite, that really is a community asset that we're leading as the Ayra team, but we're just one of the many team members. Our members are going to want to participate in the conformance testing suite as well. This gives us something concrete to poke at. It would use the full system. It would provide that trust registry fabric. Again, that's who you can connect with. It would exercise and help build out the conformance test suite. This is the how you connect. It would also be the first of the Ayra network credentials that we'd be pushing out. We know what's really the steps are on what we need to do. We know we need to define the card, figure out a few small payloads, figure out who wants to participate in the issuing, holding, verifying. We are already going to be working on with Customer Commons the basic ecosystem governance framework for the concept of the Ayra cards. We don't know how much more we would have to add to that, just to say, hey, you have access to the portal, but what other rights do you get down the road? Maybe we have to modify that. We'd want to integrate that card into our portal for access control, and then we want to link the trust registries.